Hello friends, today we will read the chapter 3, Our Changing Earth. The lithosphere is broken into a number of plates known as the lithospheric plates. You will be surprised to know that these plates move around very slowly, just a few millimeters each year. This is because of the movement of the molten magma inside the earth. The molten magma inside the earth moves in a circular manner. The movement of these plates causes changes on the surface of the earth. The earth movements are divided on the basis of the forces which cause them. The forces which act in the interior of the earth are called endogenic forces, and the forces that work on the surface of the earth are called as exogenic forces. The earth's movements are divided to two types: endogenic forces and exogenic forces. Endogenic forces are of two types: sudden forces and diastrophic forces. Sudden forces are earthquake, volcano and landslide. Diastrophic forces are building mountains. Exogenic forces are erosional and depositional. River, wind, sea waves and glaciers. Endogenic forces sometimes produce sudden movements and at other times produce slow movements. Sudden movements like earthquakes and volcanoes cause mass destruction over the surface of the earth. Lithospheric plates. The Earth's crust consists of several large and some small, rigid and irregularly shaped plates, slabs which carry continents and the ocean floors. A volcano is a vent opening in the Earth's crust through which molten magma erupts suddenly. Similarly, when the lithospheric plates move, the surface of the earth vibrates. The vibrations can travel all around the earth. These vibrations are called earthquakes. The place in the crust where the movement starts is called the focus. The place on the surface above the focus is called the epicenter. Vibrations travel outwards from the epicenter as waves. Greatest damage is usually closest to the epicenter, and the strength of the earthquake decreases away from the center. Do you know there are three types of earthquake waves? First, P waves or longitudinal waves. Second, S waves or transverse waves. Third, L waves or surface waves. Although earthquakes cannot be predicted, the impact can certainly be minimized if we are prepared beforehand. Some common earthquake prediction methods adopted locally by people include studying animals' behavior. Fishes in the ponds get agitated. Snakes comes to the surface. Earthquake, a case study. Earthquake hits Bhuj. A massive earthquake measuring 6.9 on Richter scale hits Bhuj town on 26 January 2001. Schools were most affected. At least 971 students and 31 teachers are feared to have lost their lives following the collapse of school buildings. Bhuj relief effort blighted. 3 days after the quake, concern rose about food, blankets, and medical supplies not reaching everyone. Destruction of Bhuj. Phone lines, water pipelines, and power stations transmission lines were knocked out. Fifth, fire in the city. Hundreds of fires started as charcoal cookers overtuned. Sixth, emergency declared in quake zone. The president declares a state of emergency. Seventh, CM's appeal to the centre. Gujarat appeals for financial help. The Chief Minister of Gujarat has launched an appeal for the centre to deal with the disaster. Earthquake preparedness. Where to take shelter during an earthquake? Take shelter under a kitchen counter, table or desk, against an inside corner or wall. Stay away from fireplaces, areas around chimneys, including windows that shatter, mirrors, and picture frames. Be prepared and spread awareness amongst your friends and family members and face any disaster confidently. Friends, do you know an earthquake is measured with a machine called seismograph? The magnitude of an earthquake is measured on the Richter scale. An earthquake of 2.0 or less can be felt only a little. An earthquake over 5.0 can cause damage from things falling. A 6.0 or higher magnitude is considered very strong and 7.0 is classified as a major earthquake. Major landforms. The landscape is being continuously worn away by two processes, weathering and erosion. Weathering is the breaking up of the rocks on the earth's surface. Erosion is the wearing away of the landscape by different agents like water, wind and ice. The eroded material is carried away or transported by water, wind, etc. and eventually deposited. This process of erosion and deposition create different landforms on the surface of the earth. Friends, do you know there are thousands of small waterfalls in the world? The highest waterfall is Angel Falls of Venezuela in South America. The other waterfalls are Niagara Falls, located on the border between Canada and USA in North America, and Victoria Falls on the borders of Zambia and Zimbabwe in Africa. Work of a river. The running water in the river edges the landscape. When the river tumbles at steep angle over very hard rocks or down a steep valley side, it forms a waterfall. As the river enters the plain, it twists and turns, forming large bends known as meanders. Due to continuous erosion and deposition along the sides of meander, the ends of the meander loop come closer and closer. In due course of time, the meander loops cuts off from the river and forms a cut-off lake called the Oxbow Lake. At times, the river overflows its banks. This leads to the flooding of the neighboring areas. As it floods, it deposits layers of fine soil and other materials called sediments along its banks. This leads to the formation of a flat, fertile floodplain. The raised banks are called levees. As the river approaches the sea, the speed of the flowing water decreases and the river begins to break up into a number of streams called distributaries. The river becomes so slow that it begins to deposit its load. Each distributary forms its own mouth. The collection of sediments from all the mouths forms a delta. Work of sea waves. The erosion and deposition of the sea waves give rise to coastal landforms. Sea waves continuously strike at the rocks. Cracks develop. Over time they become larger and wider. Thus, hollow-like caves are formed on the rocks. They are called sea caves. As these cavities become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the caves remain, thus forming sea arches. Further, erosion breaks the roof and only walls are left. These are called stacks. These wall-like structures are called stacks. The steep rocky coast rising almost vertically above the sea water is called sea cliff. The sea waves deposit sediments along the shores, forming beaches. Work of ice. Glaciers are rivers of ice which to erode the landscape by bulldozing soil and stones. To expose the solid rock below, glaciers carve out deep hollows there. As the ice melts, they get filled up with water and become beautiful lakes in the mountains. The material carried by the glacier, such as rocks, big and small, sand and silt, gets deposited. These deposits form glacial moraines. Work of wind. Have you ever visited a desert? Try to collect some pictures of sand dunes. An active agent of erosion and deposition in the deserts is wind. In deserts, you can see rocks in the shape of a mushroom, commonly called mushroom rocks. Winds erode the lower section of the rock more than the upper part. Therefore, such rocks have narrower base and wider top. When the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and gets deposited in low hill-like structures. These are called sand dunes. When the grains of sand are very fine and light, the wind can carry it over very long distances. When such sand is deposited in large areas, it is called loess. Large deposits of loess is found in China. Bye bye. Thank you. Have a great day.